Hey everyone, if you're listening in, you're probably wondering, like me, what it'll take for Ethereum to finally break through its all-time high.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we've got this new analysis actually came out December 16th, 2024, so pretty fresh, and it tackles this exact question,
Yeah.
but it does it in a kind of cool way.
Yeah.
It looks at both the technical charts and this thing called on-chain data.
Yeah. On-chain stuff can be super helpful. It's basically like looking directly at what's happening on the Ethereum network itself, not just the price.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So maybe can we start with the technical stuff first? I know ETH tried to get above $4,000 recently, but it got rejected pretty hard, and now it's back down around like $3,500.
Yeah, and that whole $3,500 to $4,000 zone, that's super important for a few reasons. First, like historically, that's been a really strong demand zone.
Like a floor.
Exactly like a floor where you see tons of buyers step in. And the second reason it's important is basically ETH needs to break through that level to even have a chance at its all-time high.
Okay, so it's like this wall ETH has to climb over,
Ex-
but if it can't get over, it might just fall back down.
Totally. It's like a tug of war, and $4,000 is the line in the sand.
Got it. Okay, and what about this ascending channel thing I keep hearing about? Is that another technical thing we should be watching?
Yeah, for sure. An ascending channel is basically, it's a pattern where the price makes higher highs and higher lows. So kind of like a staircase, but tilted upwards.
Oh, okay.
So basically it suggests the price is generally trending up, even though it might bounce around a bit within that channel.
So like ETH bounced off the bottom of the channel around $3,500.
Yeah.
Right. So now it's probably headed back up to the top, which would be...
Yep, right back at $4,000, that resistance level. So yeah, we're probably headed for another showdown, but this time we have some of those on-chain insights that might tell us which way it breaks.
Okay, now you've got me really curious about this on-chain stuff. Can you break it down for me? What does it mean and why should we care?
Basically, on-chain analysis means we look at the actual data from the Ethereum blockchain itself, not just the price charts.
Okay.
So we're talking about stuff like the total number of transactions, the number of active users, and something called funding rates.
Funding rates. What are those?
So think of it as a way to measure sentiment among traders, especially the ones using leverage. Basically, if funding rates are positive, it means traders betting on ETH to go up. The long traders, they're paying a premium to the people betting on it going down the shorts. And that premium can actually push the price up even more.
So higher funding rates could help push ETH above $4,000.
Yeah, potentially, for sure. And actually, when ETH bounced back from $3,500 recently, we saw a pretty big spike in funding rates.
Interesting. So if those funding rates get really high, doesn't that mean the trade is getting riskier? Like maybe a bubble forming?
Yeah, that's a good point. Super high funding rates can mean things are getting kind of overheated. But in this case, they seem to be more of a reflection of growing confidence. And remember, we also have the strong technical signals we were talking about.
Right, that $4,000 resistance level and that ascending channel thing. So basically we're seeing both technical and the on-chain stuff pointing towards ETH maybe going higher.
Exactly. It's like getting confirmation from two totally different sources.
Okay, that's cool. But you mentioned there are other on-chain things we can look at besides just funding rates. What else is there?
Well, funding rates are more like a short-term sentiment thing. But for the long-term health of the network, you want to look at stuff like active addresses and transaction volumes. How many people are actually using Ethereum.
So more active addresses and higher transaction volumes, that means more people are actually using the network, right?
Exactly. It shows real-world usage and adoption, and that's what ultimately drives the value of any crypto. And for ETH specifically, those metrics have been looking pretty good too.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We've got the technical setup pointing to a potential breakout.
Yeah.
Then we have on-chain sentiment stuff like those funding rates showing bullishness, and the D, we have even more on-chain stuff like active addresses and transactions painting a positive picture.
You got it. It's like we're putting together a puzzle and all the pieces are fitting together.
This is pretty exciting stuff. But like you said before, nothing is guaranteed in crypto, right? There could always be some crazy event that changes everything.
Oh, for sure. You always got to be ready for the unexpected. But by understanding these technical and on-chain indicators, you at least have a framework for making better decisions.
Okay, so let's say someone's been watching ETH and they're thinking about buying some. How could they use all this knowledge to actually make a decision?
Well, knowing that ETH is technically in that ascending channel, you could try to buy closer to the bottom around $3,500 and then maybe sell as it gets closer to the top around $4,000. That's a pretty classic channel trading strategy.
Interesting. But how about the on-chain stuff? How would you use that to help you make a decision?
Well, if you see those funding rates getting crazy high, it might mean the trade is getting too crowded and risky in the short term. So you might want to wait for a dip before jumping in. On the other hand, if funding rates are normal and you see good growth in active addresses and transaction volume, then that could make you feel more confident about buying and holding ETH for the long term.
So it's not just about buying when the price goes up or selling when it goes down. It's about understanding what's actually driving the market.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so fascinating. It's not just about guessing which way the price will go. It's about using data and analysis to understand the story the market is telling us.
I love that the market is telling us a story. And by learning how to read that story, we can make better decisions.
For sure. And remember, this is an ongoing process. You have to keep learning and stay updated on new developments and adjust your strategies.
So where can people go to learn more about all these on-chain metrics and how to actually use them? There's so much information out there that can be kind of overwhelming.
There are some really great resources out there that can help you get started with on-chain analysis. You can find a ton of valuable data and charts that track all these metrics, and there are even educational platforms that have courses on how to use this data effectively.
That's good to know. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are already familiar with the normal charting platforms, but is there anything specific they should look for when it comes to on-chain data?
A lot of the popular charting platforms are starting to integrate on-chain data right into their interfaces. So you can actually see stuff like funding rates, active addresses, and transaction volumes right on top of your price charts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can see how those on-chain metrics are correlating with the price movements.
That's super cool. It's like having an extra layer of insight right there in front of you.
So to wrap things up, are there any specific on-chain metrics or trends that you're keeping an eye on right now? Something that's making you think, that's interesting.
Well, one thing I'm watching closely is the growth of decentralized finance, or DeFi, on Ethereum. DeFi. That's another hot topic in crypto. Can you tell us why it's so important from an on-chain perspective?
Yeah. DeFi is basically a whole ecosystem of financial applications that are being built on Ethereum. So think lending, borrowing, trading, all without needing traditional middlemen like banks. And the cool thing is all of this activity is happening on-chain, so we can track it and analyze it in real time.
So we can actually see how much money is going into these DeFi protocols, how many people are using them, and how active the whole ecosystem is.
Yep, exactly. There are specific on-chain metrics that can tell us a lot about the health and growth of the DeFi space. For example, we can look at the total value locked, or TVL, which basically means the total amount of crypto that's been deposited into DeFi protocols.
So if the TVL is going up, that means DeFi is gaining traction and people are trusting these decentralized applications more.
Exactly. And we can also look at the number of active addresses interacting with these DeFi protocols. That tells us how many unique users are participating in the DeFi ecosystem.
So more active addresses means a bigger and more active DeFi community.
Right. And those are just a couple of examples. There are tons of other on-chain metrics we can use to track the growth and development of DeFi.
This is really fascinating. It seems like on-chain analysis isn't just about understanding price movements. It's about understanding the whole ecosystem that's being built on the blockchain.
You're totally right. It's about seeing the big picture and understanding the trends that are shaping the future of crypto.
I feel so much more informed now. But before we wrap up, is there anything else you think people should know about on-chain analysis? Or any advice for someone who's just starting out?
I'd say the most important thing is don't be intimidated. On-chain analysis might seem complicated at first, but there are plenty of resources out there to help you get started. Don't be afraid to just dive in and explore.
That's good advice. Don't let the fear of the unknown hold you back.
And the second thing is to remember that on-chain analysis is a journey, not a destination. There's always something new to learn and discover. So be patient, be curious, and most importantly, have fun.
I love that. Be patient, be curious, and have fun.
Yeah.
That's great advice for anyone exploring the world of crypto, whether it's on-chain analysis or anything else.
Totally.
All right, so we've covered a lot today. We looked at like the technical stuff for Ethereum, that $3,500 to $4,000 resistance area, and that ascending channel pattern.
Yeah, and then we went deeper, really dug into how on-chain data can give us even more clues about where ETH might be headed.
Yeah, you know what? I got to be honest. At first, I was kind of intimidated by that whole on-chain analysis thing, but the way you explained it makes it feel way more understandable.
It's really not as complicated as it sounds. Basically, it's just about looking at the data from the blockchain to see what's really going on under the hood.
Yeah, and what I found super interesting was how those on-chain metrics can sometimes confirm or even contradict what we see in the technical charts, like getting a second opinion, which is always helpful when making big decisions.
Totally. It's all about building a more complete picture of the market. And for ETH right now, it seems like both the technical and the on-chain stuff are lining up in a pretty bullish way.
So for someone listening who's been taking it all in, what would you say is the main takeaway here? What's the most important thing you want them to remember?
I think the main takeaway is this. Knowledge is power. The more you understand about the market, the better you'll be able to handle those ups and downs. And on-chain analysis, it's a really powerful tool that can give you a serious edge.
Yeah, it's not about trying to predict the future perfectly. It's about understanding the odds and making smart decisions based on the best information you can get.
Exactly. And the cool thing about on-chain analysis is it's always changing. There are always new metrics and techniques coming out, which makes it super interesting to learn about.
So for someone who's like fired up and wants to learn more, what would you say is the next step? Where should they go to keep exploring this on-chain world?
Well, like we mentioned before, there are some awesome resources online. You can find websites with tons of on-chain data and charts, and there are even educational sites that have courses and tutorials on how to interpret that data.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to link to some of those resources in the show notes.
Perfect. And don't be afraid to just experiment and try different things. The best way to learn is by doing.
That's great advice. So to wrap things up, is there like one final thought-provoking question you want to leave our listeners with? Something to think about as they continue their crypto journey.
How about this? As on-chain analysis becomes more and more popular, do you think it could become like a self-fulfilling prophecy? Like if everyone starts making decisions based on the same on-chain signals, will that actually change how the market behaves?
Whoa, that's a really interesting question. It's like that observer effect they talk about in physics, where just observing something can actually change it. Definitely something to think about as we head into a future where on-chain data becomes even more important for trading and investing.
It's a really exciting time to be involved in this space. Who knows what kind of innovations and discoveries are coming next?
I can't wait to find out.
Me neither.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Ethereum and the world of on-chain analysis. Thanks again for joining us today. It's been awesome having you as our guide.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to everyone listening, we hope you enjoyed the journey and that you're feeling ready to explore on-chain analysis yourself. Until next time, happy investing.